So you're coming up to finishing your participation activity. What next? Well, there are 5 key things that would be worth considering doing before the experience that you've gained and the self-growth that you've experienced as well. Before, while that's still top of mind, it would be perfect timing to actually look at these 5 key things. The first one is really leaving with a good impression. So just as important as it is when you first started the activity to start with a good impression and create a good impression, you also need to leave on a professional note or with some polish as well. So something like a thank you card or a letter, and to send that within the first week of leaving, ideally, just leaves a nice impression for the people that you've been with and the things that you've actually done with that team or with that individual. The other thing is to actually keep in touch with the people that you've made contact with. So it could be the person that you've been reporting to, or it might just be someone that you've developed a relationship with in the time that you've been on the activity. So make sure to add those people to your network and to put a bit of a network plan into practice. So, a regular time frame when you can keep in touch with those people, whether it's by email or a quick phone call, or if you're in the area and you have the chance, it might be a quick coffee catch up as well, and keep those communications alive and those conversations going. Even if the activity that you've done isn't something that you're considering or isn't relevant to the area where you'd like to work, it's really worthwhile keeping those communications going, because you never know when you might need a referee from that experience to be able to provide to an employer at a later stage as well. The next thing is really about updating your resume, and that's really important, especially while things are still fresh for you from what you've learned and the skills that you've developed. So the first thing is to really start looking at where's the most relevant section of your resume to add your participation activity into. And it's really going to come down to relevance again to, I guess, where you want to end up working at a later stage. If it is something that's really relevant to the career area that you're aspiring to head into, the best way to capture, I guess, that experience and to grab an employer's interest and attention straight away is to actually feature it before your employment history. So something like with a heading relevant, field experience, relevant research experience. It's a great way to actually feature that up front and to highlight that you have had some really experience that's quite, I guess, pertinent to the role that you're trying to market yourself for. If it isn't as related to where you want to head from a work point of view, but it was still something that was quite a substantial either length in time or it required quite a lot of work from your part, it's really worth adding into your employment history. So in that chronological list that you've got of all the work that you've done, so your casual work, and featuring that as the most recent work experience that you've had. If it doesn't fit into that category, then it's probably best to put it into extracurricular activities. So you can still feature it as something that you've spent a fair amount of time on, or you can highlight the key things that you've been involved in during the activity, and maybe even some things that you've learned. So whether it's skills or something about yourself along the way. The important thing is to really capture that information in point form. So we'll look next at, I guess, being able to what content you should include when you actually decide where you're going to put that experience. It's really good idea to have either a list of the tasks or the things that you actually did while you were actually at that participation activity, and include some achievements in that section as well. So if it is listed like a real job, so to speak, either as relevant experience or in your employment history, treat it like a real role. So, have a title in there if you can, or a description in there about the type of things and the organisation or the group that you were associated with for that time, and a start date and a finish date as well. And then you might want to have something like a tasks heading and an achievements heading. In the tasks section, dot point 3 to 5 things that you feel are the key areas that you've been involved in. So it could be some really small things, or just to give them a sense of what you took away from that experience. The achievement section as well is another area where you can highlight some things that you're really proud of doing, I guess, in the time that you were there. So again, it could be informal or formal recognition that you gained. It might be just something that that you were able to overcome a challenge that you faced, and there was a really positive outcome from it for the group that you were with, or for the people in the area that you were working with. What's important here is to actually capture the information in dot point format, and to consider, I guess, the key points that will help engage the reader in a resume. So action-orientated words, something that actually it's quite a statement instead of that essay style kind of format that you might be used to for your assignments. But within the resume side, you've only got a couple of minutes to attract a reader's attention. So keep it brief and make it action-orientated. In terms of the achievement side of things, often people find that the hardest area to actually put some detail around. So if you can think a little bit about what some of the challenges were that you had to face, or a task that you were given where you had really no direction. It could be anything there. But the key is really to include the end result of your actions. So, what it meant for the work that you were doing, the team that you were with, or how did it help the people that you were with at the time. And if you can add that information in, then it will really convey the significance of the achievement for the reader. Without that, sometimes it's really hard to understand just the achievement aspect of the information that's in there. The other thing that's worth looking at is somehow including the skills that you've developed. And there's a couple of different ways of doing this. The first one is you could actually add some of the skills from your skills audit. So if you go back to looking at the skills audit that you might have been working on at the beginning of this unit, and the things that you identified you wanted to develop, and then reflect on the ones that you feel you have actually been able to improve or demonstrate, adding those into possibly the tasks area or the achievement section of your resume if you've listed it like a real role. The other area is, particularly for someone or at the stage that you may be at, which is marketing yourself for a career opportunity where you're trying to link the relevance of the work that you've done overall, is having a key skills section right at the first page, on the first page of your resume. And that's to reflect, I guess, the strengths that you've gained from your collective work experience. So that's where you could start capturing some of those skills that you feel you've really gained from this participation activity. The key there is really to list up to 5 skills and to name them up front, and to keep those relevant, I guess, each time to the role that you're applying for. But in this case, it could be one of those key areas that employers really value. So communication skills, problem solving, teamwork, could be time management. So listing that skill, and then a couple of key statements as to how on this participation activity you were able to develop that skill. Okay, so as well as updating your resume, the thing to now look at with the skills that you've started to hone in on is some interview stories. And you may have already been in an interview scenario where you've been asked a typical behavioural question, which is, tell me about a time, for example, when you've had to use your initiative to solve a problem, or when you've had to work in a team of people to achieve an objective or meet a deadline. Employers love specific examples. So if you can go through and consider, while it's still fresh in your mind, some of the specific things and times where you've actually had to put some of those skills into practice as part of your participation activity, they'll be really helpful for later on when you have to go and prepare for an interview scenario. So if an employer asked you one of those questions, what would you say? Have you got an example that comes to mind for communication and when you actually had to put that into practice as part of your participation activity? Or how about for teamwork? So have a bit of a think using those skills and possibly your skills audit, which ones you feel you have got some specific examples that you can start to collect. And you might want to put them in a table, or you could have them attached to your resume in your master copy for when you need to draw on them as an interview gets closer. A good thing for helping with, I guess, putting those specific examples together is a technique that's called the STAR technique, and it stands for situation, task, action and results. So it's really a way that you can give the detail that the interviewer is looking for, and it helps them understand just how you actually displayed those skills. The emphasis of your answer or the detail needs to sit within your actions. So that's where the majority of the information that they're most interested in should be. And the rest of it is to give a little bit of context, and then you definitely need to include some of that end result information in there, which really hits home, how well you did that particular, you displayed those skills and what the outcome was as a result of your action. And probably, as well as that marketing piece of how to market your participation activity, the next most important thing is really all about reflection. Reflecting on the experience itself and the participation activity, but then looking more broadly as to what that might imply for, I guess, your career planning and where you'd like to end up eventually. So take some time now to, I guess, to consider what did you learn from it in terms of yourself, maybe the skills themselves that you developed, and start to even take into account some observations that you made, whether it was even about how you reacted to certain situations, observations about yourself and the environment that you were in. How did it feel while you were doing the participation activity? Did you enjoy it? Were there things that you did like and other things that you weren't expecting to dislike? And if you kept a journal along the way, what does your reflections in your journal reveal about some of the things that you did and your thoughts and feelings at the time as well? And use these thoughts and reflections as, I guess, to start that process of thinking about your career plans more broadly. So I guess the key to keep in mind is some of the activity and the tasks that you've been involved in may not have any connection back to the career area that you're considering. But just going through that reflection process will help actually give you possibly some more clarity around that, or reconfirm the direction that you're looking at heading into. So with that insight into yourself and maybe the information or the experience that you've taken away from the activity, start considering, has it changed your career plans at all? Has it changed your perception of where you would see yourself working after completing your degree? Has it actually opened your eyes up to some areas that you had never considered before? And if so, do you know what they would look like? Or now is the time to actually start exploring that a little bit further. It's often that we don't, I guess, in life take time to take stock. So this is a really great opportunity to take advantage of that and to use the time to get that clarity and to use it to your advantage. In terms of this reflection, it can really make a big difference in helping you get career ready. So there's probably 4 key areas to consider along with the reflections that you've gained from your participation activity. Starting to look more consciously at what makes you you. So things like, what's important to you, the skills that you know, the strengths that you've gained collectively from all the things that you've done so far. What does that kind of list look like? What interests do you have, and does that actually, combined with some of those skills and the things that you've done on your participation activity, does that actually open up some career possibilities for you as well? And even interest patterns, so it could just be the way you spend your time or the types of things that you read along the way. Just starting to look at some patterns of behaviour that you may not have consciously reviewed before. The other thing is goals and objectives around your work. So what do you want to get out of work? What does work mean to you? What sort of experience are you looking for through your work? The other thing is expectations, salary expectations. What are you expecting to be paid? Would you be prepared to work unpaid to be able to get ahead in the area that you're considering? Or would you volunteer at all to start with as well? And timing. When are you actually looking at starting to find a career role? Would it be straight after university, or are you wanting to have some time off and do some travelling before you get serious? So with all this in mind, the next thing is to start setting some actions for yourself and some goals, whatever stage you're at. So make sure that they're relevant to the stage that you're at the moment. So if you feel the participation activity has actually confirmed the career pathway that you had in mind, then it may be just some action planning to help starting that process of helping you get there. So it could be something like, talking to someone in the industry to research more a little bit about the types of roles that exist, what the entry points are for a graduate coming into that particular industry. And it could even be approaching someone, asking them what associations are they members of, and starting that whole networking process of looking for opportunities to meet people in the industry and start talking to them and making some connections. If it's given you a sense of reassessing where you'd like to be working, or it's actually changed your views at all on where you would like to be from a career perspective, then the planning that you set yourself, or the goals that you set yourself, might be a little bit more exploratory. It could be more about setting some time aside to talk to a lecturer a bit about what the alternative pathways might be for the interest areas you've got, the skills you've developed and the degree that you're doing. Or you could talk to the career service as well to get some help with just working out how to actually research some of those alternative pathways a little bit better. The real thing to keep in mind with setting goals, and regardless of the type of goal, is to make them SMART. So specific, measurable, they need to be achievable, realistic and timely. Make your objectives clear and easy to understand. Set some timeframes around them and consider how you'll know when you've achieved that goal or achieved each of those objectives. Consider what other commitments you have at the same time, and try not to, expect too much of yourself so that you're going to be actually making it harder for you to achieve those. Set yourself up for success, so avoid making them too complex or tackling something too big. So if it really is about, starting to work out where it is you'd like to be from a career perspective, try and break it down into smaller action points so that you feel you're making some headway and you've got something that's realistic that you can focus on and achieve that, and then keep moving on. So best of luck with your career plans from here, and I hope you take some of the tips on board for how to make the most of your participation activity and to help yourself with heading in the direction that you want to be in.